We all have lots of stories to share, and sometimes the stories we tell help to reveal not only values we hold dear, but also a bit about the storyteller herself. I hope this story says as much about me as it does about whom it is told. You know, it really is difficult to think just how many people touch our lives each day, or how many people touch our lives in the course of our lifetime. Hundreds? Thousands? Maybe even more. And most of these people we never even come to know, but are simply drifters skimming past the perimeter of our lives. And of those countless hundreds or thousands of people, there are then those, just a few, who actually become kind of a fixture in our lives, almost a mainstay, whose life energy and stories inspire us and keep us smiling and keep us going through our day. The one fixture in my life is no doubt my mom. My mom's unusual outlook on life is incredibly motivating, and the pickles in which she has found herself make for wonderful life lessons. She's even been known to perform a miracle or two. One such lesson arises from a monumental event that happened to my mom several years ago. It's a wonderful example of how sometimes leadership can come at the most unexpected moment, and how we all sometimes have to fight our desire to flee the inevitable. And so the story goes. Several years ago, a friend of my dad's, as well as a prestigious member of UW-Madison, passed away, and my dad received the honor of being asked to be a pallbearer and to ride with the others in the hearse before and after the service. My mom, meanwhile, not being quite so acquainted with the deceased, had tons of yard work to do before the first snowfall, and was in fact in the middle of raking her huge yard. So she opted instead to drive separately and quietly attend the service and pay her respects from the back row of the church. Decked out in her usual gardening garb, which included a pair of sweats and one of my dad's old dress shirts, Mom camouflaged her grunge look by slipping on a pair of knee-high pantyhose, high heels, and a long trench coat, and slipped quietly into the service. As soon as the funeral service was over, Mom boogied to the parking lot intending to head home, only to discover that in her absence, the funeral staff had placed a funeral flag atop the hood of her car. And as she attempted to dodge the crowd pulling out of the lot, she was loath to discover that she was fourth in line, behind the hearse and family. Well, at this point, suffice to say that Mom recognized defeat and decided that she would simply follow the procession to the cemetery, which was only 8 miles away, and then break off and head home, replace the heels with her tennies, and get back to her raking and yard work. As is typical in most of these cases, fate had a different plan. As Mom and the more than 30 cars following her neared a factory, a semi-trailer did the unmentionable and pulled out in front of Mom, cutting her off from the leading hearse. Keeping cool, Mom drove on, knowing that she would catch up at the next light. As she arrived at the lighted T intersection, this semi peeled away to the right, and like the curtain going up on Broadway, Mom suddenly found herself center stage, with no hearse in sight, and an entourage of flag-waving, light-beaming cars behind her, awaiting her command. As she awaited the green light, Mom pondered the situation, and decided that she would take a right, which was, after all, the quickest way to the cemetery, and therefore, logically, the direction that the hearse would have gone. Once she took the right, she figured, she would quickly catch up to the hearse, and all would be right as rain. As the odometer quickly climbed to 45, a feeling of dread began to take hold, and like a collision from nowhere, Mom was struck broadside as it suddenly dawned on her that rather than follow the fastest route through the busy traffic, the hearse opted for the slower and longer route and took a left at the light. As she merged onto the busy Beltline highway, her flag waving in desperate surrender, Mom clocked her speed at over 60 miles per hour as she desperately made one last attempt to ditch and run. Car after car, the funeral procession raced, stuck like super glue to Mom's bumper. Bewildered onlookers slowed, confused by the onslaught. And like a ship without a captain, Mom realized that not only was she the lead car in a funeral procession without a hearse, but that if she tried to veer off and go home, the end result would be 100 people at her house, bearing witness to her high heels and sweatpants ensemble. In less than 15 minutes, Mom and the crowd arrived at the cemetery, wind-whipped, exhausted, and dumbfounded as to the whereabouts of the dearly departed. And more than once, Mom heard the whispered grumbling of an attendee, wondering who the heck was in such a hurry, and how he could barely keep up. And 30 minutes later, as the hearse finally arrived, Mom had to laugh to herself as she envisioned the lonely line of 3 cars slowly snaking through the quiet neighborhoods of Madison's East Side, and of the pity the onlookers must have felt for the person whose following consisted of so few family and friends. The moral of the story is a simple one. At one time or another, we are all called to be leaders, to be a beacon for others to follow. And although we may not feel up to the task, in the end, we must find a way to muster up the energy, pull up our big girl knee highs, and do the right thing. And stay the course. Follow through, knowing it might be lonely at the top. Be content with the outcome, even if it isn't quite what everyone expected. And most importantly, maintain a sense of humor. For me, Mom's story is a constant reminder of this.